All right. Hope you all had a nice lunch and not in too much of a lunch coma. Welcome to my session today, Coder Coach Catalyst. So what we're going to be talking about today is how to use questions to get the people around you to grow and at the same time unburden yourself from all the extra work that we as technologists inevitably end up taking on when people show up and ask for our help. So, although the formula that I'm going to talk to you about here today is very simple, just like in coaching, it's the application of it that counts. Meaning, I can only give you the questions and methods and techniques. Whether you get any value from that or not is all up to you. Now, you have to go out and you have to practice it. And in the beginning, it's going to be awkward and it's going to be hard, but then it's going to get easier. And then it's going to get really valuable. So what I'm going to be talking about here today is going to boil down to one skill, 3 different coaching formats, and 5 different questions. In its essence, it's very simple, but then, when you try it out, you're going to see that it might not be the case. So if you do this correctly, or if you just do this to start with, it's going to change both how you listen, how you interact with people, how people listen to you, and in terms of how you're perceived inside of your teams and your companies. So I have to warn you all, there's going to be a slight interactive segment, about 2 minutes, where you're going to have to speak to another person during this presentation. Now, I'm telling you that not so you can flee the room. I'm telling you that so you can look around and make sure that you have another person to speak to when that segment comes on, so you don't have to move around during the session. Now, my name is Martin Mazur, and I work as a consultant, coach, speaker. I have over 20 years of experience in the software industry. I started out as a software developer. In the last 10 years, I've been working in different types of leadership positions as a CTO, CPO. Today, what I work with is I coach tech leaders, CTOs, tech leads, CEOs at SME companies in order to bridge the gap between business and tech. Because let's face it, sometimes tech goes off on a tangent and does its own thing and doesn't really create the value. So this is where I come in. Now, I've spent all of my career inside of the consulting industry, meaning I've seen a lot of different companies. I've seen large, big corporate organizations. I've seen small organizations. I work with startups. And I've seen teams that function really well, but I've also seen teams that don't function well. And I've seen what people do in those teams that function well. And I've also seen what people do when things go wrong. And it's upon all of this experience that I, created this talk that I bring here for you today. So just a quick show of hands. I want to see how many people here work in individual contributor roles as software developers, designers, other types of things. All right. And the rest of you, is that leadership, management type positions? How many is that? All right. So this should be relevant for both, but it's built from a perspective of an individual contributor moving into a more leadership coaching type position, right? So as technologists, when we start out, we pride ourselves on logic and correctness. This is the way we see the world. Maybe that's always the way we've seen the world and we went into technology because of it, or we went into technology and we got taught this world view, meaning that everything is logical, everything makes sense. Things are either black or white, they work or they don't work. The system is online or it's offline. And inside of this system, the most glorious thing you can do is solve problems. So we are masters at solving problems. And that's been working for us for a very long time. We've been most of us have had a very good career just because we're such good problem solvers. Then something happens. We are expected to not only deal with the code and the machines, we're also expected to deal with people. Some of us, by choice, we decide that we want to deal with people. We want to be a team lead, a tech lead, or want to move into to this type of position. And some of us just by fluke or by accident. Nobody else is stepping up, so I have to do it. Or I've been 10 years at the company, and now everybody's looking up to me for answers, and all of a sudden I have all these people around me that I have to deal with and talk to, and I wasn't trained for this. So our work is then no longer about technology, or it's primarily no longer about technology. And the honest answer is, it never really was. It never really was. It was always about the people. That we built the technology in order to support the businesses, to support people, to make things move in the world. We didn't build the technology for building the technology's sake. So when we're in this new position, we're now moved into a situation where we have to deal with people on a daily basis. We default to the way that we used to manage things, which is basically solve problems. We move into problem-solving mode, and we try our best to solve everybody's problems. And this is not bad. I mean, we do this because we want to be helpful. We want to be a helpful individual, so when somebody shows up at our doorstep with a problem, we're just like, yeah, sure, I can help you with that. And if we're really good at doing that, if we're really good at solving people's problems, we eventually become heroes. We become the heroes of our organization. People start depending on us that they can show up with whatever thing they have, and we're going to fix it. We become the fix-it person. And not only for our peers, even maybe for PMs, when they have a critical issue, they come to us and be like, hey, I have this thing, and we solve it. And the rumor spreads. It's like, I can go to Martin, I can give him anything, and it just magically goes away. Like, that's the best thing. Now, the issue with this is that we usually do this at great personal cost. Nobody sees what that does to us. Because now we're not just managing our own workload and our own problems, we're also managing everybody else's problems. Now we start building walls. We start building pieces of code, pieces of architecture that nobody else touches, right? So we have this thing, and now I'm the only one that understands it, because every time there's an issue with it, I go like, yeah, let me have it, I'll go solve it for you, and we do. I go into organizations and I open Git history. I can see that like the top performing tech lead or architect or whatever has all the commits in the core of the system. And when I talk to them in their first scoping session, they go like, everybody here is an idiot. Like nobody here understands anything. I'm the only one that can fix this code. It's like, yeah, because you're the only one that committed to that piece of code for the last 5 years. There's no wonder you're the only one that can fix this code. Now, sometimes this works for a really, really long time. Like sometimes these heroes get away with it for a really long time. But then something happens. The product takes off, or there's a new investor, there's funding, the team grows or the product grows. And all of a sudden, what was being manageable is no longer manageable. And this is when you either die a hero, this is when you either become the villain or you die a hero. Dying a hero meaning is basically you hit a wall and you burn out. You're gone. Because the workload gets too much. Or becoming the villain is that, the workload becomes so huge that when people show up and ask you to do things, you become snarky and dismissive. You go like, I don't have time to deal with this. Like, please go away. Like, I can't deal with these things. You're uncooperative. PMs stop coming to you with things because now when they show up at your doorstep, you used to be the fix-it person. Now you're the black hole. Oh, I never give anything to Martin. Like when I give them stuff, it just disappears and I never hear back. Because you're just so overworked that you can't deal with any of this. Now, some leaders, or tech leads or architects that I've seen, build towers around themselves. They create these villain caves where they can hide out and hide behind shipping Jira tickets and PowerPoint sketches to everyone. Because now they're so important and so busy that they can't really deal with the day-to-day. So they communicate via Jira tickets. So the question is, are you the hero right now or are you the villain? And were you ever the hero? So most people don't go as far as really becoming the villain fully, unless until they've actually tried getting some help. Because most people understand this is unsustainable at some point. And then they go to somebody that they respect. They go to maybe their manager. And with their manager, they go and ask, I'm in this situation right now. It's being really tough for me. So could you please help me out? This is not working out. And then you're going to hear one of the following things up here. Just say no to things. It's simple. Why don't you just say no to things? It's easier said than done, right? If you've been in this situation, you can't just say no to things. You need to delegate more. What does that even mean? Like, the first time I heard this, I was like, delegate more. If you're in a managerial position, that's fine. You have people to delegate to. But most people in tech, we don't have people to delegate to. Where should I delegate these things? What do you mean by that? You need to set clear boundaries. It's another thing. It's like, yes, it's not useful to me. You need to protect your time. Variation on the same thing. Just don't take on other people's work. That's really simple. Just don't take on other people. But, they are not giving you an alternative to what to do instead. This is my favorite one. And this is an actual thing a manager said to me once. Have you tried just not caring so much? Like, you seem too engaged in what you're doing. It's like, really? Or simply clone yourself. This used to be a running joke at a place where I worked, where a lot of leaders were like, if we could just clone Martin, everything would be solved. That's, it seems like funny, but it's actually not funny when you're when you have a lot of work and stuff is stacking up, and the only thing you get back is jokes. You're not, when you're asking for help. Just tell everyone you're busy. That's going to be fine. I'm just going to tell my team, like, I'm busy. I can't deal with this. That's going to make me seem less snarky, more cooperative. So when we are in these situations, it's not actually just one problem. The problem is not just about us. It's actually two problems. So in this presentation, what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you concrete things that you can do in conversation, not to take on more work, and at the same time, help people around you get better. So the whole productivity of the team goes up. This is where the catalyst part comes in. Instead of doing the work yourself, make the people around you grow so you as a whole team can become better. So the two problems we're going to be dealing with here is the one problem is the you problem, which is the problem of you becoming the bottleneck, preventing work from getting done. Because if you've ended up in the fix-it person situation where work keeps flowing into you, and now everybody's depending on you to do something until they can start working, and you have a team of 10, that's eventually going to fail. Because they're going to be able to generate more stuff for you than you can ever take care of. The second problem is the they or the them problem. This is what you're inadvertently doing to the people around you, to your team. By taking on all of their problems, by trying to be helpful, you're actually robbing them of growth opportunity. You're actually robbing them of an opportunity to learn new things and get better at whatever they're doing. So we're going to try to solve both of these in this session today. And before I move in to the actual techniques in doing this, I want to talk a little bit about what coaching is, because I'm sure people talk about coaching all the time, and there's so many different versions of coaching, and people think about different things when they think about coaching. So I want to, at least, for this hour, let's just agree on that, the things I'm going to be talking about when I say coaching is this. And this is based on an idea put forth by a gentleman called Timothy Galloway, and he was a tennis coach. So what he noticed was when the players he was coaching, when he gave them extremely direct advice on what to improve. When he says, like, well, listen, you need to hold your hand a little bit more straight. I know nothing about tennis. A little bit more straight in order to hit the ball wherever you're supposed to hit the ball. They would improve in the moment, but that wouldn't be a long-lasting improvement. But when he said, hey, you should focus a little bit more about your hand. Think about what your hand is doing. Now, not only would the player know how to self-correct in that situation, it would also be a lasting correction. So when I talk about coaching, this is the type of things I talk about. It's not you should do this thing differently. It's about, have you thought more about what you're doing in that moment, or have you thought more about where your hand is when you're doing that thing? So basically what we're talking about is helping others discover the solution on their own, not solving the problems for them. We're talking about asking good questions, not giving answers and instructions. Focusing on the person, because this is personal growth. We're not focusing on the problem. So if somebody shows up with the problem, that's their problem, but it's our person, if you understand what I'm saying. Long-term growth, meaning, some of these things take time to actually evolve. So in a crisis situation, you might not be coaching people. In a crisis situation, you might actually be giving direction. But what we're looking for here is long-term growth for our team and long-term growth for the people around us. And adapting to others' needs, meaning, we need to find a way where we can help them instead of using this one-size-fits-all type silver bullet approach that we think is going to work for everyone in our team. Now, this last one, the irony is not past me. I'm talking about one skill, 3 different formats, and 5 questions that I claim is going to solve everything for you. At the same time, I have a slide saying there's no one-size-fits-all solution. So to put this into context, what we're going to be talking about today, this is not the solution. This is not the end-all, be-all. Do it like this and all your problems go away. This is, if you've never used coaching techniques, you are new to coaching, or you find yourself in this situation, this is the starter pack. And, with anybody played a collectible card game or anything similar, the starter pack is only where you start. Then you have to add on things. You have to add on things that fit for your company culture or the country you live in culture. You have to add on things that feel comfortable to you, the language that you're used to using. So you're going to have to evolve this to make it your own. And that's when the true power comes in. And then you're also going to need to adapt that to the people around you, because eventually you're going to notice that these things might not work for everyone. But that's your discovery journey. But this is a great place to start if you haven't done it before. So let's jump right in to the first thing, the one skill. And this is, if you take away nothing else from this presentation, just please remember this thing. Because the one skill I'm going to talk about is active listening. Now, active listening, what that is the act of sitting down and actually paying attention and listening to an individual, not waiting for your turn to speak, or in this term, waiting for you to ask a question. It's paying attention to all the different things that happen when they speak. Not only what they express verbally, but it's also different type of body language cues or emotional cues. How, from Layla's presentation this morning, how are they saying things? Where am I putting the emphasis in the word, I never said she stole my money. So we have to engage fully with the individual that's speaking to us, right? Avoid any type of distractions. Avoid looking at our phones, our computers, emailing at the same time, looking at the watch, anything that would perceive that to them that, we've lost attention. We're not paying attention to what they're saying anymore. Because they're not going to be open to having a genuine conversation with us if we seem distracted. We have to stay calm, stay compassionate, understand that, whatever they're saying, that's true for them. Regardless of how that might feel for us, whatever they're saying is their truth. And we also have to be mindful of what we give back. So what am I putting out in terms of body language and gestures and facial expressions? Am I maintaining eye contact with the person that I'm speaking to, right? Because if they're telling me something really sad and my body language is overly happy, it's going to create a disconnect, right? And then there's concrete things we can do. All of this is, you understand it, but you have to practice it. But the concrete things you can do is things as summarize what they just said, or at least what you heard that they said. So when they talk, you listen with intent, and then you go like, so what I heard that you're saying is, and you paraphrase whatever was the important point. That serves two purposes. One, you can check if you got it right, because they can now come back to you and say, you know what, that was not what I meant, or that was not what I was saying. What I meant to say was this. Or they're just going to say, yes, that's exactly what I meant. And the second thing is, it shows that you listen. Right? It showed that you actually paid attention and listened to what they were saying, because now you can repeat it back, paraphrase to them. Brief verbal affirmations. Now we do this all the time without thinking about it, but it's good to be a little bit mindful when you're listening intently to be like, yeah, put the ums and the and the yes and everything in the right places, the nods, in order to keep people talking, keep them in a conversation. Show that you're engaged. And if you embody the whole active listening skill, what that basically boils down to is empathy. And anybody that has seen any other of my presentations where I talk about empathy, for me, empathy is a skill. So empathy is not something that you have or you don't have, you're born or you're not born with it. Empathy is something you can train. Now, when I talk about empathy, it's not that you should agree with whatever I'm saying, whatever opinion I have, or whatever emotional state I have. It means that you have to understand that given my background, my experiences, what I've been through, the ideas and feelings and thoughts I'm having are correct for me. You have to understand that, given everything I've seen and been through, what I'm telling you here today, that's true for me. You can still disagree with me on that. That's fine. But you have to understand that, in my perspective, those things are right for me. Now, if you want to train a little bit of your empathy, the craziest exercise I've ever done, also the most impactful one, was when I had to pick a person that I vividly disagree with. And this can't be a paper cutout of a person. It has to be like a real life person, somebody that you met, that has an opinion that you really just hard to disagree with. Now you sit down and you write a one-page essay about why they are right. Why they are right to have that opinion. What happened in their life to put them in a situation where that opinion happened. And not from a judging perspective, but from a perspective of, I understand that they can have this opinion given that these and these things. That's a really hard exercise to do, but once you've done that, you're going to get a little bit of that mindset in. And the more you do it, the more you practice it, the better you're going to get at it. Now, I'm going to let you practice active listening here and now. This is the only interaction you have to do. After this, you can lean back and enjoy the rest of the presentation. So I know Scandinavia. I know it's hard. I live in Sweden, so we have the same type of culture. But this is a coaching session, so you have to expect some interaction with other people. Now, what we're going to be doing is what I call coaching like a 5-year-old. Now, reason it's called coaching like a 5-year-old, because anybody that's had a 5-year-old at home knows that these are the exact questions you're going to get asked over and over again. Why is that? What's that? How is that? Now, the way this exercise works, we're going to have a person 1 and a person 2, right? So when person 1 stops talking, person 2 can ask one of the following questions. Why? Why is that? Or what is that? Or how was that? These are only 3 questions you're allowed to ask. And person 1 describes a problem, issue that they're having. Please use something that you're comfortable with sharing, because, don't bring up something you don't want to talk to strangers about. And person 2 then uses all of their mind to listen to person 1. Okay, so you listen. When they stop talking, you can ask one of these 3 questions. And we're not going to do role switching, so just decide who's person 1 and person 2, and you can download this exercise on the QR code to try it out later on. I'm going to give you 2 minutes to do it here in the room, and then we're going to talk a little bit about it. Everybody understand what we're doing? Yes. Good. All right, 2 minutes is up. That goes back. See, I got everyone talking. That's nice. How was that? How was that? Fast, yeah. For the people listening, how did that feel? Did you feel any different when you tried to listen with full intent? Yeah? Just how you could have heads up. Was it different or was it just the same? Yeah. Now, for the people that got asked questions, did anybody get any insights? Did you learn anything about anything? Too short to get any insights. All right. Now, the reason we do this exercise like this is because since you only have a fixed set of 3 questions, you don't really have to think about what's my next thing. You can be very much in the moment. You can practice active listening. So, you know, when they stop talking, you just pick one question and you can pose it directly. So you don't have to overthink, where am I going next with the conversation? This exercise is based on the 5 whys, so it's a root cause analysis. So it usually doesn't solve anything. It just surfaces a lot of problems. And it's an exercise that's designed to be a little bit thought-provoking. It's not the way you would actually do any type of real coaching. But it's also a lot of fun to do. So, you know, take this home, try it with your teams, have fun. So that was the one skill. Now we're going to go into the 3 different coaching formats. So the first format I'm going to talk about is formal coaching. Now, the reason I bring up formal coaching first is because this is what most people think about when they think about coaching. So when people say, I want a coach or I want to be coached, they think about formal coaching. So formal coaching is when you have a coach, you have a set time, you go away for 40 or 50 minutes into a room, and you have a coaching session. It takes place on a set cadence. We meet every week or every, bi-weekly or whatever. And you usually work on a specific problem. I want to do this improvement, or I want to develop this skill, or I'm having performance issues, or I have something else I want to work through that I want to improve on. So in this sense, the coach kind of has a memory, right? So you say something, they give you some homework, you remember, you do the homework, you come back, they check in with you, how did it go, you get some new homework, and over a period of time, you get to the goal, you get where you want to be. And once you're happy with that, maybe you pick a new problem or you pick a new coach because, coaches are for specific needs. So depending on what you're working on, you might need a different coach. So formal coaching is very nice, specifically if you're a manager or a leader. But since most people in the room here are individual contributors, work in software tech or design or something like that, formal coaching is a little bit weird. The reason formal coaching is weird is because you need to have a coaching relationship. And the way you have a coaching relationship is you agree that you want to be coached by me, and I agree that I'm going to be your coach. And we now have a coaching relationship, right? It's not something I can decide on my own, I want to coach you. So that's weird to do in most situations, being like, hey, I think you need a coach, so I think I should coach you. Do you want to be coached by me? Unless you have kind of juniors and, they agree with developing in certain skills, this is not something you as an individual contributor would normally set up and normally work with. Yet, this is what most people think about when they think about coaching. So, also, if you've never done coaching before, this is a really tough place to start. Because you're not only working inside of the actual coaching session, you're not actually only working on the little thing. You have to think about it in a larger scheme. Now, what I'm going to be talking about later is 5 questions or 5 steps that you can go through. Now, these work twofold because they would work in a coaching session, that you go through the 5 steps in a coaching session, but they would also work through a whole coaching engagement, that you go over the steps in the whole coaching engagement. So they're both in the engagement, and then each session would have the same type of steps inside of it. But again, this is not where you start. It's a hard place to start. If you're an individual contributor, it's weird to set up formal coaching engagements. But this is where a lot of people want to be. And you can get there. What we will talk a lot about is impromptu coaching or informal coaching, on-the-fly coaching. Now, this is the type of coaching that is really useful to individual contributors or actually anybody working. Because this is the type of coaching that happens in conversation. It happens in the meeting, by the coffee machine, at the lunch table, or wherever you are, at your desk when people show up with issues. Now, impromptu coaching is also the type of coaching that can protect you from taking on other people's work. It's very uncommon for people to try to put problems on your table in a formal coaching session, but in this situation, at the lunch table or if somebody shows up at your desk, this is where you can use coaching techniques in order to have them leave with the problem and a way to fix that problem on their own. So impromptu coaching focuses much more on smaller bite-sized things. It's not a full session of 40 to 50 minutes sitting down coaching someone. It can be a small conversation of 10 to 15 minutes with a few select questions that is going to give them enough context and enough information to go out and solve the problem on their own. So again, this is something we can use completely without agreement between the two parties. So you don't have to agree to be coached by me. I don't have to even tell you that I'm coaching you. This can happen whenever we want. In some situations, what you might need is you might need permission. Because some people, for some people, especially if you're trying to coach up, we might need to ask permission to coach them. And we're going to go through that later. And if you're good at impromptu coaching, if you do this a lot, this can also lead to formal coaching agreements eventually. Because people are going to be like, hey, I always come and talk to you, and you always help me work through things. Would you like to be my coach? And you go like, yeah, I would. So if you do impromptu coaching well, you're eventually going to end up in a situation where you might get formal coaching agreements if that's your goal. Now, the last one I'm going to talk about is probably the most complex one, and I had to throw it in there because it's also one of the most fun ones to do. It's team coaching. Now, team coaching can be formal or impromptu. I've used it mostly in a formal setting. This is what I do with a lot of the teams that I work with. So team coaching is when you don't coach just one individual, you coach several individuals at the same time. Now, when would you want to use this? Well, if we're trying to work through team issues or interpersonal issues inside of the team, this might be the best way to do it. Or if you're trying to get the whole team to move as a unit to a new way of working, or they're trying to do a shift or a change in the team, this might also be more helpful. It's time saving for the coach because I don't have to approach each individual one-on-one. And it's also time saving for the individuals because now they don't, talk to me and I try to kind of steer the situation. It's better to get everybody in the room and talk together at once. But it's also probably the most difficult format to use. And the reason it's the most difficult format to use is because you have several people. So there's several things going on at the same time. So you as a coach might need to deal with things as discussions or fights and other types of things that happen in the room. So this means you might have to step outside of your coaching role, of your asking question role, and step into a facilitator role, or sometimes even a mediator role. So it's hard to do, but it's very effective if you're trying to move a whole team inside of a direction. So that would be the last format, and now we're going to talk about the essence. We've talked about the one skill that's the basis for everything. We talked about the 3 different formats, and then we're going to talk about the 5 different questions. And these questions work in all the 3 different formats, okay? So the way this is structured is it's 5 questions and they flow one after each other. They go in 5 different steps. The first step is initiation. Those are the questions that drop us into the coaching conversation. Then there's the excavation. This is where we dig to find the actual problem, what's actually going on here. We have focus questions where we try to figure out what's the real issue of everything that we've found when we dug around. And then option questions, which is we dig in and ask what has been tried before, what could work, and what could work here, and what should you do about it. And then we have the last question, the last segment, which is the action question, where we actually push people to do something about it. So when they leave with something to do about it, and they took the problem with them and didn't leave it with us. Now, we're going to be using a fictional conversation between a tech lead called Taylor and a developer called Sam. And in this example, all of these 5 steps are going to flow very neatly, one after another. The reason they're going to do that is because the fictional scenario that I wrote, and this is how fictional scenarios that I write work. In reality, that's probably not what's going to happen. But if you keep these 5 steps in your head, that you know that this is the way you need to drive the conversation, even if you go 1 step forward and 1 step back and 1 step forward again, you can keep track of where am I in the conversation and what do I need to ask to move to the next question, next segment. So it's going to work, but in reality, it's probably more messy than it's going to be in this example. The first question we're going to talk about is the initiation question. This is the question that drops us into a coaching conversation. Here we want to use open questions. What's on your mind is probably one of my favorite questions. I've also been known to use what's up, and it's kind of like more, yeah, hey, what's up? And people just start talking about what's going on. What do you think if if we've been talking about something and they seem goes like say, what do you think? That can also drop us into a coaching conversation. There's questions you want to avoid here. There's definitely questions you want to avoid. Questions like, how are you? Because how are you, or are you feeling all right? Is everything okay? Now, these are questions that are perfectly fine to ask as a good human being. We should be interested in how other people feel, and we should be interested in how our colleagues feel. But these are not coaching questions. These are not initiation questions. The answer of this question is not going to drop us into a coaching conversation because we will not be able to deal with people's emotional states as coaches. There's other people for doing that, and we will be talking about some of the pitfalls of using these techniques as well. Now, anything that they can easily answer with yes or no, don't ask that. Because yes or no, it's a quick shutdown. They say yes, and you have nothing to go on. You can't continue that conversation. Or how's it going? How's it going is a bad question because it can be perceived as a status question. Specifically if you're the lead, tech lead or architect on something, like, hey, how's it going? And they go like, oh, they're checking in on me. So anything that can be, feeling like you're checking in on someone, avoid that because they might not even tell you the truth because they're perceiving that you're asking for status. And status is not going to drop you into a good coaching conversation. And the last one that you should avoid is, do you have any problems or do you have any issues? The reason is because it immediately puts their mind on thinking about problems and issues. And even if they didn't have any problems and issues, now they have some. They're going to come up with a problem or issue, and they're going to tell you that problem or issue. And now you're just coaching around some made-up problem that maybe didn't exist in the first place. So open-ended questions that don't put a lot of evaluation. What's on your mind? What's up? What do you think? Good questions. So here we have our fictional character. Sam walks up and says, hey, Taylor, you got a minute? Taylor says, hey, Sam, what's on your mind? See? Initiation question. Taylor keeps going. I'm feeling the crunch with this feature release. We keep getting last-minute changes to the requirements, and I'm worried we won't make the deadline. Can you help? Now, everybody here wants to jump in. You go like, yes, show me how far you've gone, and I'm going to take the half of it. You take the other half. We can do this together. We're going to reach the deadline. And all of a sudden, you've taken on their work. But that's what we're going to try to avoid here. So in this situation, we're not jumping on it. We're not going to jump in. We're not going to help. We're not going to offload. We're going to do something else. We're going to dig deeper. We need to understand what this is about. So for digging deeper, we use excavation questions. The best excavation question is, and what else? It's a great question. But this isn't the best way to do excavation. The best way to do excavation is actually really, really hard. It's called shut the fuck up. Because being quiet is a trigger. It gets people to keep talking, right? So if you can manage the uncomfortable silence in a conversation, not say anything, that's probably the best way to do excavation. But that's really hard for most people, so I usually go for "and what else?" because that's the much easier thing. Now, "and what else" is not a question you would only ask once. We're going to show it in an example later. It's a question that you ask multiple times because when you do excavation, you want to keep digging until you find something. You go like, hey, that's what I think this is really about. And don't worry about asking this too many times. We have a question to fix that later. So like even if you ask "and what else" too many times, we can self-correct this. So let's jump in here. So instead of jumping in and helping, we go like, all right, sounds like there's a lot to handle. So again, we're empathetic, we're affirming, we're actively listening. I've heard what you said. There's a lot to handle. And what else is going on? Well, it's like every time I think I'm done, another change request comes in. It's like I can't keep up and I'm getting worn out. Okay? We really want to help, but let's stay on track. Let's stay on track and try to do what we're doing. Again, we empathize. We say, I get that. I understand where you're coming from. What else? Well, actually, I guess part of the problem is that I haven't been pushing back on these changes. You know, I just joined the team. I'm saying yes because I don't want the product team to feel like I'm being difficult. That's interesting, right? That wasn't the same problem that they walked in with. Now, if this was a real-life scenario, I would probably push further here. I would dig more. I would say "and what else" again. But, you know, to keep this presentation moving, let's move on to the next step and see what happens. So next question we have is the focus question. And this is where I said, you know, this is where we can correct that if we went too far. The aim of the focus question is to get under all the real cruft. We dug up a lot of stuff when we did excavation, but now we need to figure out which of this stuff is valuable to work with and which of this stuff is just things that, you know, that we were talking about. And this is a very precisely designed question. I'm going to talk about why it's very precisely designed, because when you try to make this your own, when you try to form this to your own language and the way you speak, it's important for you to understand what goes into this question. The "you" in this question is really, really important. What is the real challenge here for you? Because if you drop the "you" from this question, this becomes a completely different question. What's the real challenge here? Well, you know, the company and I never get the budget, and Jake is such a, and I can't work with them, and la, la, la. It becomes about everything. And we can solve everything, but we need to understand what's the real challenge here for you. So "you" really puts this question into context, and the context is important. So when you change this question, make sure to keep it the way it's intended to work. Otherwise, you're not going to get to the conversation the way you want to get into conversation. So let's pop this question in and see what happens. Thanks for sharing that. So what's the real challenge here for you? I feel like as part of the team, I should just be able to handle everything that comes my way. It feels like everyone else is managing. As the new person, I don't feel comfortable saying no. Okay, they don't feel comfortable saying no. So at this point, we are irking to, I was just going to go back. It's not doing what I, so. All right. So, there we go. So, at this point, we really want to jump in and give solutions. At this point, we feel we have it all figured out. And we've been through this ourselves. So we really just want to say, you know what? You know, when I was in this situation, what worked for me was, and then we would offer up an anecdote of whatever I did when I was in this situation. Or we would say, you know what? I know these people. What you should do is, but we're not. The reason we're not going to do this is because we don't know what's previously already been tried. And we don't want to come up and say something that they've already tried doing and it's already failed for them. We don't know if they have the same background, same tooling, same training that we have. So maybe the things that worked for us might not work for them in this new situation. So what we need to do is we need to understand what's been tried, and we need to understand what resources they have to try things on their own. Besides, what we also want to do is we also want to create agency. So if the solution we leave them with is our solution and it fails, they're going to put that failure on us. They're going to be like, yeah, I tried and it didn't work out, but it was Martin, he told me to do it this way. So they now don't have any agency over their own actions. They have a way to get out of it. And then when they succeed, they're going to be like, yeah, but I didn't really solve it. Like Martin fixed it for me. And that's not what we're trying to do. We're trying to build people up. Remember, we're working on the long term here. So we're going to use option questions. And I'm cheating here because option questions are not one question. There's no way to put option questions as one question. It's actually a battery of questions that kind of go around what's happened so far up till now, what are you going to do next? So this is a question like, what have you tried so far? What have you tried before in similar situations? What resources do you have that could help you? And then we can use and what else, the favorite question again, to dig deeper in all of these things. The purpose here is to generate understanding for what's been tried and what's been done and what could be done in this situation. Now, let's see what happens here when we start digging around for options. So that's understandable. Again, we empathize, we check in. What have you tried so far? What have you done to manage the changes? I've been working longer hours to stay on top of things. I tried creating lists to prioritize the task, but I end up saying yes to everything anyway, so it hasn't helped much. Now that's great. It's great that we didn't tell them to just, do some more crunch time or prioritize a list, because they've already tried that and it didn't work out. So in similar situations, when you've felt overwhelmed, what worked for you? Well, I managed it better before by checking with the team to see which parts were really needed for the deadline and which could wait. But this time, I've been too worried about disappointing people. So this goes back to that they're new in the team, right? So it's a disappointment. They don't want to put too much pressure on these new relationships. So we continue pressing on. Makes sense. So what resources or support do you have that could help you? I suppose I could clarify priorities with the product team and maybe let them know that I'm under time pressure, but I'm not sure how to start that conversation. Okay, we're getting somewhere. We can work with this. They know what they need to do. They've said it out loud. They just don't know how. And again, we need to avoid offering up a solution. We need to generate action. So action questions. What are you going to do about it? This is probably, one of the more aggressive ones. So what are you going to do about it? There's less aggressive ones. What's the next step? What's the smallest step you can take? What will you do when you leave here after this conversation? Which would probably be used much more in a formal coaching setting, but can also work in impromptu coaching. There's also one which you should be mindful of. It's a good one, but it can sometimes backfire. And it's like, what do you want from me? Because sometimes the conversation keeps going in a circle, and then you can go like, so, okay, I understand, but what do you want from me? The reason that's a risky question is because they say, well, the only thing I want from you is to take this problem off my hands. You're back to square zero. They have to start over the whole coaching conversation again because you're not there to take the problem off their hands. I sometimes also pair these with accountability questions. So when will you do that? Or send me a text message when it's done. And the biggest problem with these things, as I'm going to show you here, is we go into here and here, here the coachee is really struggling. It's a really uncomfortable situation, and they don't feel like they can stretch that much. So I'm going to use a softer one. That's a good starting point. So what's one step you feel comfortable with taking to get that conversation going? Now, here, the issue is that maybe what they are suggesting, I think I could reach out to the product lead to ask for a sync on priorities, maybe frame it as a way to ensure we're focusing on the highest impact changes. I should let them know how each change impacts the timeline so they can understand the trade-offs. Now, this is a bit rambling. They don't really sure what they want to do. We probably want more clarity here, but we're going to let it go because it's an action. So the tough thing is when we coach people, they might come up with solutions that are not the solutions we want. It's not the solutions that we would do, but we have to let them run with the solution so they own the problem. So here we're just going to encourage that. That's a good idea. When are you going to set that up? See, I want accountability. I want them to give me a date. I'll send a message by the end of the day and schedule time with them. All right, cool. Great. Let me know if you need any support, and remember, it's completely okay to clarify priorities to keep a realistic workload. You're doing a great job balancing everything. Nice. So we closed it down. They leave. We didn't take on the problem. They now have something to go on. This might not solve the whole issue, but then they will come back and we will try again. Now, we have a few minutes left, and I'm going to go through two more things. I'm going to go through coaching for decisions and advice, because this is really interesting. This is mostly used in the same way, but we use this when people come to us and want us to make decisions, or they come for us for concrete advice. So instead of just giving them a yes or no, we can use this because it's, this yes or no is virtually zero cost to us. So people go like, should I do this or should I do that? Just do that. But the problem is when you do something like that, you don't give them the framework to solve that problem the next time around. So here's a way to give them a heuristic, give them a framework like the Agile Manifesto, this over that, or you should pick this instead, you should pick this over that, or you should think about decisions like this. So they have a few questions to lean back on when they're faced with these types of things. So here we have a fictional scenario again. Hey, Taylor, got a minute? Hey, Sam, what's on your mind? Which framework should we use for our next project? Common question you would ask, right? And they've already narrowed it down to two frameworks. Now, we might be very tempted to go like, just use React. That's what you're supposed to be using. That would get them out of our hair, zero cost to us, we're done, everything is finished. So instead, we're going to dig. What criteria do you think are important when choosing a framework? Well, I don't know, maybe ease of use. All right, and what else? You see, we're using the question again to go deeper. And what else? Community support and resources, I guess. All right. And this time we keep going until we get a no, that they don't know. Anything else? I don't know. I can't come up with anything more. Now we do something differently. Now we actually add in our own heuristics. They've come up with two things. We have some more things we want to add into the list. For this project, I would also consider scalability and then always check the licensing, right? So these are the things we would add in to whatever they've already come up with. Of course, we continue. So now we have ease of use, community support, scalability, and licensing. Can you get all of that information? We ask them if they're confident in getting all of that information. Yes, it should be easy. Okay, given if you have that information, are you going to be able to make the decision? I think so. Thank you so much. So the reason we would do it like this is, one, we now put agency on them. They now can make the decision on their own. Unless this is a decision, which we as architects or tech leads have to make, then we have to make the decision. But if it's a decision they can make on their own, we give them the framework for making the decision. The next time they're faced with a similar decision, they have this way of thinking in their heads, and they might not come knocking on our door. Just one less person coming and asking for help, which is great. We created agency in our team. So the next one here is interesting. This is the who can you coach question, because a lot of this stuff that we were talking about up until now, the scenario is between a tech lead and between a software developer. So in a scenario where you would need to coach upwards, where you need to coach your manager, you need to coach your peer, this might be a little bit tough because you don't have that normal relationship where it would be comfortable for you to just go and like, you know, and what else? Or you know, they would be like, or you're being a little bit weird about this. But the beautiful thing is these questions, they do actually work without you having the domain knowledge. So even if you're not a CEO, you can actually help your CEO think about problems using this type of framework to get to better solutions. But what you might need when you coach a peer or a manager is you might need permission. So for this, we have what I call a permission question, which is basically you're asking if it would be okay to ask a few questions to clarify things. Would you be open to talking through this? Or, you know, there's different types of ways of phrasing this, but that's something you can ask. So in this scenario, we have a very good CTO. The CTO is, you know, talking about the struggle that they're having. I'm going into a big meeting with the board later this week to secure funding for our product division. I'll be honest, I'm not sure how to frame it, but don't worry, I'll figure something out. They're good. They're being transparent with the team. They're telling us what's going on. They're also telling us it's not our problem to fix, it's their problem to fix. So I think all in all, they're doing pretty well at their job. But they're also sharing that they feel like they're struggling with something. Now, we could go here in this fictional scenario and pop a permission question. Would you be open to talking through this? I might have a few questions that can provide some perspective. See, now all of a sudden it might not feel so weird when we start talking to them. Yeah, sure, can you do it tonight? We could order some food and eat while we talk. Right? This is a busy person, so they don't, you know, they're going to set aside time for us in the evening to come chat to them. I think that's a fair trade-off. Now, if we're serious about making change, we might want to jump on this opportunity and set it up. Sounds great. Now, you might not do that in a room full of people. You might want to catch them after the meeting and ask if it will be okay, so they don't feel like that's weird. But this is one way of entering a coaching conversation when you're trying to coach upwards or sideways, trying to coach your peers. All right. So, actually one slide missing, that's fine. We're going to do it like this. I'm going to I'm sorry about this, because I did this in a shorter version before at a conference that didn't have 60-minute speaking slots. So before you know, I close out with the summary, I just want to talk to you about some of the pitfalls with using this type of stuff, some of the things that you should watch out for if you start applying this type of framework, if you start doing this. The number one thing you really want to watch out for is real psychological issues. When you start talking to people this way, what can happen is they're going to start sharing things with you which you are not qualified to handle. You're not a psychologist, so you shouldn't be able to handle those things. Then you should step out of coaching mode, not try to coach them. You should take them in the hand and go like, you know what? There's probably a professional here that can help you. Let me take you to them. Let's go talk to HR together. Let's go, you know, talk to some professional that can help you deal with these issues, right? Now you're being a good human being, a good person. You're helping them to get the help that they need because you're not qualified to deal with this type of real psychological issues as a coach that went to a session at NDC Oslo. Now, there's also the shoulder to cry on. Now, this is common, and then again, from a human perspective, being a nice colleague, that's fine. Some people just might need somebody to go to complain to and cry on. They're not really looking for coaching. They're not really looking for. They're not really looking to solve the issue. Now, I usually shortcut those types of situations unless I just want to be the shoulder to cry on, with the question, what do you want from me? Gently being like, yeah, I understand, but, what do you want from me in this situation? And if they just say, I just want you to listen, then I'm there, I'm just listening. But I need to understand if this is a situation where they want me to step in as a coach, where they want coach. Maybe they want actual mentoring, just like advice. They just want them to tell them my experiences and give them concrete things that they can do. The next thing is gossip. Now, gossip is when the conversation is not about the person in the room, it's about somebody else. Oh, I'm having a problem with Jeff, and Jeff is like this, and Jeff is like that, and you should see what Jeff did. And when Jeff did that, and you go like, there's no way for me to coach you about Jeff's problems. So what you do is you have a question is, oh yeah, that's very interesting. So what did Jeff say when you told them that? Now you're going to see the person's face change, be like, what? It's like, yeah, what? So all these, when you approached Jeff and you told him that, what did he say? Yeah, that's a pretty good way of getting out from this. And the second one is similar. It's like the third subject. This is when we are in a coaching conversation. This is not gossip. This is we are in a coaching conversation, but everything is a problem with somebody else. Right? So we're talking to somebody else, yeah, but that's because they did this. And then talk to somebody, oh yeah, but that's because, the PM didn't have the things in the right time. And that's because of, and then you go back to the question, what's the real challenge here for you? Right? This can help us get back on track. So that's the last one. So let's summarize this quickly. We have one skill, that's active listening. On top of that, we have the 3 different formats, the formal, the impromptu, and the team coaching, which the impromptu is probably the one which is most useful for you. And if you've never done coaching, this is where you want to start. That's the type of coaching that happens in conversations, in meetings, at the coffee machine, at your desk. Then we have the 5 different questions. We have the initiation questions, which drops us into the conversation. The excavation questions, where we dig up all the stuff that we need to talk about. Then we have the focus question, which is the question that helps us narrow into a problem. Lastly, we have the option question, where we go through what's been tried before, what type of resources do you have, what are we going to do about it, and then we have the action question, which forces the person to do an action and pushes them to do something about it, which can be paired with an accountability question in terms of, when are you going to do that, or when are you going to do that, or send me a text message when you did that, all right? So before I close out, this is a quote from Peter Block. Questions are more transforming than answers. The skill is getting the questions right. So that's my message to you. Thank you so much for being in my session. I'll stick around here, take questions. There's some stickers here if you want. Thank you all. You've been a great audience.